Hey everybody, I'm Curtis.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is Love at First Fright.
Do you have deja vu or is it just me?
I don't want to talk about it, but we also have to talk about it.
We have to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You probably, if you follow our podcast, you probably noticed that this episode is 2 weeks late. And it's because we recorded the episode and then
It was a perfect storm of things going wrong to make it so we couldn't get the episode out on time.
Yep.
And it was really disappointing and upsetting.
Yep.
When I finally got a chance to sit down and edit, and it just didn't.
The audio is just completely unsalvageable.
Unusable audio.
Yep.
I can't recreate it. It was just really choppy the whole way through. Every word was split into three.
Yeah, I don't know what
distinct
happened.
sounds. It was really weird. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it was that. I was taking finals at the time,
and I can't do it alone.
Yeah,
I don't even know what a computer is.
Yeah, it was just a lot, and so we ultimately decided that the audio is unusable, so we couldn't use that episode. Sure. So we have to re-record it. So that's what we're doing now.
Yep.
But that the length of time it would take, just because, again, the perfect storm of stuff.
Yeah.
Just making it so we couldn't even re-record in a timely fashion. We were just let's just shoot for a double feature thing. Yep. So we're gonna release this one, and on the same day that this is releasing, you're getting another.
You're gonna get 2 episodes.
Yeah. You're gonna get the next episode back to back.
Yep.
So you can spend 2 hours of listening to us talk about movies.
More episodes, more movies, more.
Yeah.
Come on down to the Love at First Fright zone.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Thanks for sticking with us. In case it even needed to be said, I'm sure it's evident to everyone, but we're newbies at this, and so yeah, we appreciate the patience and the support as we kind of figure it out and make these mistakes and learn from them.
Yep. I made the rookie mistake of, when we finished recording the first attempt at this episode, of just being all right, we got it.
Yeah.
And then we just went and did something else.
Yeah.
And then we got busy and I couldn't sit down to edit it.
Probably we're just sitting on the couch watching Next Level Chef or
something. Whatever. Yeah. Something that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Right then or whatever. Well, okay. Yeah, I guess.
To be fair,
it did need to happen. I needed to know what happened. But, once I heard the audio, and I was like, well, it's basically unusable, because I might have been able to fix it, but it would have been just an unreasonable amount of time. And I don't even know that it would have actually made it listenable. So anyway, but we're here now. We're doing take 2. I've double checked it before we started recording, so it's good. And I'm gonna check it when we end the recording to make sure it's good.
Smart.
So that it's good.
See how we're learning and growing.
Yeah, we've already learned.
Yeah. But yes, this is take 2. Thankfully, I never remember anything that I have said, will say. So, it's basically like the first time.
I remember everything, and if you say one thing different, I'm calling you out on it.
Oh, so I have to stick to the script?
Yeah, I'm going to change what I said, because you won't remember. But... I also don't fully remember. I mean, I remember how I felt about it, and that didn't change.
Yeah.
But, we might talk a little differently about it. I don't know.
Well, you'll never know.
Yeah.
You'll never know, because
we certainly didn't rewatch the movie again to record this.
We've already seen it multiple times anyway, and I didn't need it again 2 weeks later. So I'm good.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you just want to dive right into
Let's
it?
just get into it. We had a whole thing last time where we talked about Costco and our adventures of going to Costco.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it now, so that's lost forever.
It's not real anymore.
Yeah, we didn't just go to Costco.
Like, who even was that person at Costco 2.5 weeks ago or whatever?
Costco? I don't even know her.
Yeah. So anyway... We're just gonna wipe the slate clean, and we're starting over, and we are starting over with Sinister. I don't know. I was just trying to put some mustard on it, and
you did like a weird like spider thing when you made the noise.
I'm prepping.
Neither of those things have anything to do with Sinister.
I don't know. I just, I'm just a little showmanship is all. It's for emphasis. But yes, we're talking about...
The spider hands were for emphasis to who?
I'm prepping for when this will inevitably become a audio visual.
Oh, okay. So then it can be embarrassing and people can see it.
Damn. It really be your own
No,
yep.
I gesticulate a lot when I talk, so I'm sure it's gonna be, why does he do that with his hands?
Like what you're doing right now.
I'm rubbing my face. What are you talking about? I didn't shave today. Yep. So it's a little itchy. Well, it's not itchy. It's like...
Stubbly?
Yeah, it's like right when it starts to grow back in.
Yeah. That's like I know we said we were going to get right into it, but I just have to say, like, one of the biggest shams about being a human person is that hair just keeps growing. Like, you'll shave it, and then
it's back.
By lunchtime, your friend's back. He's the man behind the mask. We don't own this.
Okay, don't sing it.
Yes, but anyway.
Insert ending credits theme song to Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives.
Yep. The best song ever. So let's go ahead and talk about it. We are going to talk about Sinister. Yep. This is a 2012 horror movie that was directed by Scott Derrickson. It was co-written by Derrickson and then his partner C. Robert Cargill. And you might know Scott Derrickson from some other projects. He did do The Black Phone more recently. He also did The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is it's not a found footage. That's it's like a faux documentary style exorcism movie that I think is actually like super underrated and is excellent. And he also did Doctor Strange,
That's cool.
2016 one.
He also did that other movie we reviewed recently, Sinister. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
The one we're talking about right now.
It's a little joke.
It's a little joke.
Because we did the episode already.
Yeah, we did it already. So he did do Sinister as well.
For the kids.
But yeah, Sinister... we've got a good cast. Of course, it is led by the wonderful Ethan Hawke. He is playing Ellison Oswalt. And then the other characters are his family. So we have Juliet Rylance playing his wife, Tracy Oswalt. And then their two children. We have Michael Hall Diario as Trevor Oswalt and Claire Foley as Ashley Oswalt. And then we also have James Ransone as the deputy. And... yeah, James Ransone, he's one of those, he's like that guy, like he was in It Chapter 2 as Eddie. He was also in The Black Phone, which also Ethan Hawke was in, so like...
I wonder if they're like one of those,
worlds.
You know how like in the Conjuring stuff or like the James Wan horror stuff or whatever, Patrick Wilson gets... He's like in everything. He's like in all of them. Yeah. I wonder if it's a similar situation.
Might be. They just like working together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of prompt of this movie is that Ellison Oswalt is a struggling true crime writer who moves his family into a house to work on a new book. But when he discovers some snuff films depicting gruesome murders in the attic of the home, the situation quickly spirals out of control and his whole family is in danger. So it's kind of supernatural, kind of mystery, kind of horror, and it's a really good one. I know before we did it for the pod, I think I'd only seen it once, maybe twice at most. I hadn't seen it a lot, but I really enjoyed it the first time I watched it. It's one of those movies that, because like a couple years ago, they did a study where they like hooked people up to heart monitors and stuff to like see what was like the scariest, objectively scariest movie of all time. Yeah. And Sinister was like up there. I think it was number one year. I think they did it again and it went down to like 3 or something. But it's always right up there around the top. And I think it's because there's a lot of jump scares in this movie. So if you are a jump scare hater, then you may not like this one. But jump scares work on me. Yeah. I'm a easily startled friend.
Yeah. I think that it being so reliant on jump scares is actually one of the reasons that as time has gone on for me and having seen it several times now, that I think it's gotten less good as time has gone on. I still think it's like, if you've never seen it before, it is good. It is scary. But it loses some of it when
I would agree.
When you kind of break it down into like, it is basically just a bunch of jump scares.
Well, it's jump scares and then it's also a mystery, and the mystery is kind of satisfying again that first time, maybe even the second time you watch it, because the second time you have that lens of like, I already know what the solution is, so now I can find all the little clues. But after a while, there's nothing really left. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know where all the jump scares are, you know what the mystery is, you know where all the little clues are for the mystery. So I do think as you watch it, it probably goes down in quality, but I still feel pretty positively about this movie. And again, like you said, I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a watch for a horror fan. I think it's genuinely pretty spooky. Yeah. Which is, you know, not always easy to do. Just to kind of give a plot summary, because I think we want to talk about, you know, specific scenes, but just to sort of put it into context a little bit. Mm-hmm. Ethan Hawke, he moves his family into this house, and the house was owned previously by a family that was brutally murdered. His family doesn't know that, but he knows that, and that's the murder that he's wanting to write this book about. But then as he's getting settled in, he finds this box in the attic that has all these tapes in it, and as he watches the tapes, he realizes that there are other murders of whole families throughout, you know, time, and he's basically trying to put together, okay, who's responsible for this murder, these murderers, what is their motivation? Mm-hmm. And then as he kind of gets deeper and deeper into this mystery, more supernatural things start to happen in the house. And, you know, he's realizing that there may be some kind of occult element to these murders. But that's sort of the framing of the movie. We spend a lot of time watching the little snuff films. And that's where a lot of the scares come, is that, you know, there are these certain videos and they were actually filmed on Super 8.
Yeah, the snuff films themselves were filmed on Super 8 just to like lend some realism to it.
So they look really cool, and it's very like unsettling because it's all these, you know, like choppy shots and slow panning, like atmospheric things, and it, you know, it's very creepy. But that's a big part of the movie, is just one, watching those films, which is where a lot of the horror is, and two, trying to piece together, so like, what the heck is going on? And it seems like maybe it could even be happening to Ethan Hawke and his family, because as the supernatural stuff starts, his first thought is like, maybe there's an intruder, maybe we're next, you know, all those kind of things. So I think it's a pretty interesting movie. I think it's a pretty interesting story. I will say I've seen the sequel, and I didn't care for it.
Yeah, Sinister 2, just to speak on it very briefly, is, I think, one of the movies that I go to as an example of over-explaining
exactly
the monster.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, the mystery's ruined. And they kind of explain it at the end of Sinister anyway, so you don't really need to like get into all that.
Right.
So when they did Sinister 2, it's like, what else is there to even say about this?
And that was my complaint about it as well. Like, I feel like Sinister works because because at its core there is a mystery to solve,
Yeah.
but we already know the answers by Sinister 2. So then it's just kind of like, okay, more shots of this guy being weird.
More shots of this rejected metalhead.
Yeah. Yeah, the like villain of the movie, the children refer to him as Mr. Boogie.
Because he really likes to dance.
Yeah, he's always cranking that Soulja Boy.
Cutting up in there.
Yep. But he really does. He looks like some like Allison Cooper's brother. Alice Cooper.
Yeah. No, he looks like imagine like Gene Simmons or anybody from Kiss.
Yeah.
Or JoJo Siwa's new look.
Yeah.
Just it's basically that.
Yep.
He's got long kind of
long,
stringy, eternally
hair.
wet looking
Yep.
hair. That white and black makeup. But he's otherwise just like a guy.
He's just kind of a guy. Yeah.
His actual name is Bagul,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's what they refer to him. And like when we get into like the cultural lessons about where he came from, and he's just like a demon who feasts on the.
He's like a pagan. God or something.
And he feasts on like the souls of children or something like that. And
Yep.
he exists in images and stuff
Mm-hmm.
and whatever.
Yep. So it's interesting because I really go back and forth on how I feel about his character design. Like in some ways it works, right? I mean, he is a very iconic looking villain, and you could pick him out, like you wouldn't recognize that that's who that is based on his look.
Sure.
But there also is kind of a level of silliness to it where it feels like stereotypically evil, like especially with it kind of there being this relationship in the film to like paganism and like ritualistic occult murders and stuff.
Yeah.
It almost feels a little bit like what like a sheriff in the 80s would be on the lookout for in terms of like the bad people in town.
Yeah, it does almost feel like a caricature of the satanic panic stuff, right? Like we have a guy who looks like a metalhead. Like if he were to go to any metal concert,
he would blend in.
Would blend in. You wouldn't be able to pick him out. If you put him in a lineup of like horror movie villains, he would recognize him.
Yeah.
But I don't like, and yes, it's iconic, but I don't necessarily think it means that like he's like great.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But that's a personal preference thing.
Sure.
Honestly, I will say, as much as I really do genuinely enjoy this movie, and I do want to highlight some scenes that we really enjoyed, but I think throughout the film, one of its weakest parts is kind of the character design and the special effects. This is something we see as we go deeper into the movie and these supernatural occurrences start to happen. Because part of this is that it's always a family that gets murdered, but one of the children just goes missing and they're never found. So they don't know if they were killed separately, if they're being held somewhere. No idea.
Yeah.
And as Ethan Hawke is kind of putting all of these pieces together, he has a few supernatural encounters with those lost children.
Yeah.
And one scene in particular, we really spend some time with them as he's like moving around his house and the children are also moving around the house, but they're just kind of like sliding out of view right as he turns around to look. But we as the audience get to see them, and they made this artistic choice to like paint their faces with that kind of like cracked porcelain doll look.
Yeah.
And it just like it doesn't hold up super well.
Well, I think it's that along with like they don't put the makeup like anywhere else.
It's literally like chin up. Yeah.
And there's one shot in particular like right after that sequence that I think really highlights it, because he goes up into the attic after he hears some sounds. He like pokes his head up in there, and there's the old reel thing that he's been using, the projector to watch it, has been like moved up in there, which he didn't do, and it's aimed at a screen and showing some footage, and he's looking at the kids all sitting there watching it, and then they all turn their heads and look at him, and it is literally just their faces, and from the neck down they just look like normal kids.
Yeah, it looks like they got face paint done at the fair.
Yeah, so it doesn't really look good.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of true for most of the like effects regarding the children. And then sometimes Mr. Boogie or Bagul or whatever you want to call him.
Sure.
Just because, again, he just has like this metalhead face paint on, and then he's wearing like a suit. You know, like there's nothing like really scary about that, except for the fact that like he just pops out and does like fun jump scares at you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another scene with the kids actually where Ethan Hawke has like gone outside.
Oh yeah.
And he said, so their son Trevor has these night terrors, and part of it is his reactions to like going around the house and having these supernatural experiences, because you might be like, well, if he's having these experiences with like ghosts and demons and stuff, why is he still investigating this as though it's a normal murder?
Right.
The issue is like almost every time, except for towards the tail end when we're getting towards the climax, there is seemingly a normal like answer as to the things that he is hearing and experiencing. So the first night he hears these sounds and he starts looking around the house, and he finds his daughter has gotten up in the middle of the night and couldn't find the bathroom in the darkness.
Yeah,
he takes her to the restroom, sets her back to bed, and then he hears sounds again later, and he finds this box that's just sitting in like one of the rooms. And then their son Trevor like does this weird backwards curl out of the box, and he's like screaming when this happens. But it's because he has these night terrors.
He has these like sleepwalking / night terror.
Yeah.
Like,
and so
incidents.
you could reasonably be like, okay, so he was hearing them moving around, so it's not actually anything supernatural. We as the audience know it's probably because of the supernatural shit going on.
Because we know we're watching a horror movie.
Exactly. But later, he hears these other noises. He's looking around the house and he goes outside. I can't remember like what draws him outside at first, but it doesn't really matter. But he goes outside and he finds Trevor again in the bushes. And he brings Trevor back inside. And then he has to go back outside to pick up the baseball bat that he'd left out there. And when he does, he encounters this big like Rottweiler dog.
Yeah.
And there's this shot when he's trying to like, you know, back off from the dog. We get to see behind Ethan Hawke's character and on this like hill in this weird lighting.
There's like, it's like
all 5 of the
backlit.
kids. Yeah, all 5 of the kids are just standing on the hill looking at him, and it's kind of cheesy. Again, you get this like jump scare. It's like, oh, whoa, dead kids.
Yep.
We don't want that.
Whoa.
But like, I don't know. It gives that sense of like, really? They're just gonna stand there and do that? It's kind of weird.
He's just standing there.
Yeah.
Menacingly. Yeah. I think that the kid horror is probably the weakest horror in the film. I think the movie is far more successful with its scares and its like atmosphere and tension building in those snuff films.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think those are like, each one is pretty short. I don't know exactly how long each of those little things is, but it's relatively short. But each of them really do give you that sensation of like you kind of want to like hold your breath the whole time because you're just stressed out about like what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah.
So I do think that those films are really, really successful. But yeah, the kid stuff is a little tough. I do remember there's the time that I was referring to where Ethan Hawke is walking around his house and the kids are like scurrying out of view. Part of what like an interesting decision that they made with the direction of that scene was that they have the children, they have filmed them in such a way where it looks like they are moving in slow motion, but everything else like in the environment and Ethan Hawke are moving in, real time, normal speed. And it does definitely add to like the creep factor and the kind of etherealness. It actually reminded me of this. There's a Japanese horror movie. It's from like 2000, 2001. I don't remember exactly. It's called Pulse. And Pulse is also kind of a ghost movie. And there's a really famous scene. It's like considered like one of the scariest scenes of all time, where this character is like wandered into this, dark hallway thing in an abandoned part of town, and when he turns around there's a woman standing at the end of the hallway and she starts approaching him, and we know that she is a ghost, but the way that she moves is like that, where they have filmed her in slow motion but everything else is in real time. And it is so unsettling the way that she moves, like, in that scene. It's awful.
Yeah.
It is genuinely, like, one of the it's definitely the creepiest scene of that movie. But it has stuck with me long since watching it. I do wonder if that may have been their inspiration, because it feels very, very similar.
It might have been.
But I liked it as a choice.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I also don't know that it was as successful as something like in Pulse. And I think it's not because of they chose to do the slow motion thing. I think that was cool. Again, I think it's like the child acting
the makeup
of it
and everything.
And the makeup. Like the kids look like they're like dancing around and stuff. There are scenes, I think, when they're in the attic, when he pokes his head up there and they all turn back to look at him, they all like do the little shh thing with their fingers up to their lips, and I'm like, it just reads as not that scary, or creepy. It's just cheesy.
Yep. No, I feel that.
But I mean, like, the mystery at the heart of it, I think, is pretty good. You are trying to like solve what's happening, although I think it becomes pretty clear, like, it is a supernatural thing. So like, him solving this is never going to be like, you know, locking somebody up for it, or like actually solving the crime or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a point where he considers that it may be part of like cult activity, like the murders could be maybe part of a cult initiation, a ritualistic sacrifice, something like that. In which case there would be, you know, an offender or offenders that you could point to.
Yeah.
But that was kind of his starting point as he was putting together some of these supernatural pieces. There's like a symbol that's in a lot of the videos, and you know, he of course like gets hooked up with some professor of occult studies somewhere,
some college,
and he knows everything. He actually gets hooked up with that professor through the deputy guy, because Ethan Hawke is like, as he moves into town, we are immediately aware of some tension between him and the locals. Like the sheriff or whoever like shows up and is being really like sassy with him, like, we don't need a repeat of what happened with your other book where you got it wrong, and we do good work here, and you know. So he's not well liked, but there is one deputy in the department who is a fan of his work, and who, I guess, you know, he looks at it as, I guess he also feels that there's more to this murder than what the department has, you know, decided is like the story that they're going with. So he's kind of willing to sneakily, on the down low, help him out. So, you know, he's like running information on the past crimes through the database, and he's, you know, helping him find these witnesses and stuff. So that's also, you know, really important in terms of putting together the pieces of this mystery, because when Ethan Hawke first finds this box of the films, he has no context for them. All they have on it is just like a cutesy little name that's like pool party, family barbecue. In a year. And so, you know, they really have to do some work to figure out, where did these murders take place? Who even are these victims? You know, but they figure it out together.
I'd say the deputy figures it out.
Yeah, the deputy figures it out. Ethan Hawke mostly just drinks bourbon. And yells at his wife.
I do want to kind of talk about like that part of it. So this was in the era of horror movies having like a metaphor as the actual bad guy. Like, the it's a demon that consumes the souls of children and everything. This was also a metaphor about like alcoholism and mental health and everything, because he's a struggling writer, novelist, and we see at a couple points in the movie where he's like watching an old interview that he had from like his big success,
his first big break, which was a true crime book. And so he's kind of chasing that. Like the whole reason they moved out of the house they were in and to here is because they weren't making as much money anymore, and he wasn't happy like editing or writing college textbooks or whatever, which would have been enough money for them to survive on. He just didn't want to do it because it didn't give him that fame and recognition, and that's kind of, there's some tension there because he doesn't have the self-awareness to know that is the reason.
Yeah.
Like, he tries to present it to his wife and his kids as, no, I'm doing this for us so that we can have a good life and you can have the things you deserve, and like, we'll be on easy street if I can just, make this work. But all of them are saying, like, hey, we don't need a mansion.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of just want a
the daughter wants to move back home, like, the day that they're moving in, which, it's a small child. So, like, all their friends are back there. But, like, his wife's trying to be supportive, but she also, at a certain point, is like, I can't do this again. So, like, we're not going to do that. Plus, she makes a comment that, like, he's broken into the whiskey like way sooner than he normally does. Yeah. And again, the movie does a good job in supplying enough evidence that you could reasonably say he's doing this as like a coping thing, because like he's basically every single night he's like watching snuff films of like whole families get annihilated and children go missing and stuff. And he's dealing with all this other stuff. But at the same time, like, it is concerning that, like, the first night that they are there, when he sets up his office, he breaks into the whiskey, he starts drinking. So he's, like, basically always drinking in this movie. And she makes one of the first conversations they have on the first night. She's going to bed, but he's going to stay up to set up the office. And she makes this kind of on-the-nose comment about, when you're happy, we're all happy. And then, wouldn't you know, as the movie goes on and he's, like, spiraling, things keep getting worse and worse and worse in the house. So, it is this whole, like, metaphor thing. And I know that, like, there are people that, like, don't necessarily like the whole, like, the bad guy's a metaphor for depression or whatever. I think it's fine and good. I don't think that this movie is like worse for it or anything. I do think it's an interesting take on that. And I think the movie still works even if you don't look at it from that lens. Like, if you do just look at it as truly a supernatural thing and it doesn't have that metaphor in it, it's still fine. And I think that's really where the movies can kind of get a little tricky, is if like the movie doesn't work unless you have the metaphor in it.
But they really follow that through all the way to the end, because spoiler alert, towards the ending, the big twist that they realize is that this series of murders is they're interconnected. So they thought they were random at first, but what they put together is that a family gets murdered in the house, a new family moves in, and then when that new family moves away, they get killed in that next place that they live. And this happens every time with as far back as they have access to trace.
Yeah, it's like 66 is the first year that's on the thing.
But the thing that's really interesting, and I think also lends to kind of this like metaphor discussion statement about alcoholism, is that Ethan Hawke is basically self-sabotaging because rather than sticking it out and like solving the problems where he reverts back, and then that's what actually causes his family to, at the end, because he moved out of the house, which is what triggers it. And so I think there was kind of there was a good full circle story. And also, I have to say, as a person who watches a lot of horror movies, I kind of respect when there's like a quote unquote sad ending. Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty dark, messed up ending. Like we're alluding to it. Ethan Hawke, their son Trevor, I say Ethan Hawke, the character that he's playing,
Ellison Oswald,
Trevor, and I don't remember the wife's name in the movie.
Tracy.
Those three are killed. They're literally chopped up into pieces by their youngest daughter. By the end of the movie, they are drugged, tied up, and she cuts them up and films it at the end of the movie. And so it's a pretty dark, messed up ending, but it's also like you kind of knew it was coming the whole time, right? Like, especially when you figure out that the kids are the ones that go missing, and then when he get the reveal that the kid is the one that always killed them, so you kind of know one of them's going to do it. The thing that I think is the real the real tricky part of it is that you don't necessarily expect it's going to be the daughter.
Yeah.
I think they're building up from the
son.
the start of it that it's going to be the son, because he has the
he's
night
like
terror thing.
Troubled
yes,
and
he's always the one that's like right around when it's happening.
Yes, he's acting out at school,
right?
And, all that stuff. Whereas the little girl's just like this sweetheart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that is kind of the big twist, is that it was the child that went missing was the one who killed all the other family members, which puts all these films in like a whole different light.
Yeah.
Because when you first watch them, like just for example, with the first one that they show, which is what do they call it? Like backyard hangout, or
I think it's like hanging out with the family.
Hanging out with the fam.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And it's from 2011.
Yeah. But it's just, it's the family that lived in this house that our family moves into. And it's them, like, in the backyard. They're, grilling out. They're throwing the ball. They're hanging out. They're having a good time. And you're just kind of seeing these different shots of them in their environment. And then there is a harsh cut to the family, 4 members of the family, all with bags over their head, hung by a noose on this tree branch in the backyard. And someone is standing in the tree. We can't see them because they're behind the tree trunk. And they are basically cutting this branch to use leverage to lift the family up to actually, like, cause the, strangulation.
Yeah.
And when we first see that, we don't know that it's the kids yet.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of makes sense, because you're like, okay, so that explains why this person had to kind of rig up this system, because it's like a 7-year-old girl or whatever. And it's also really creepy to watch those films, because you have this really, like, sick feeling when you first see it. You're like, oh, this is happy, they're having a good time. But then you're like, but who is filming this?
Yeah.
Because, like, all of the shots are almost kind of voyeuristic in nature, where they're, they seem to be kind of like watching them from a distance. So it's very unsettling. I do think all the films are wonderful. I say wonderful. They depict terrible murders, but they're really well done.
Yeah. I think we should talk about the scariest moment in the movie. For me, it's really easy. I think it's the scene everyone thinks about for this movie. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, strap in.
Yep.
I think it is one of the reasons it is considered like one of the scariest movies of all time, is because of this scene. It happens in one of the snuff films. It's called like Lawn Work, whatever year that it's supposed to be in. And it starts out with this, voyeuristic style of like filming with the Super 8 camera, but it's from outside. It's like, I don't know if it's raining or whatever, but it's dark. And, they're watching this family from the front window into their living room. And then it starts to go into the backyard, and it's kind of aimed at the ground a little bit. And then you see like the person walk up to a lawnmower and then starts, pushing the lawnmower and everything. And you mentioned it earlier, and that a lot of these snuff films in the movie do a really good job of like drawing you into each one of them. I think there's a couple of things that they do really well for that. One, each one of them is a unique style of these executions that are happening. So you're not really getting any repeats, except for it's a family that has been incapacitated in some way, and one of the children has gone missing.
Right.
From the family. And, on a couple of them, we see maybe the figure known as Mr. Boogie in the background or something, and maybe this symbol that's shown up at a couple of them. But other than that, like, the actual style and content of them is different.
Yep.
Also, each one of them has, like, a unique soundtrack to it. It's not music, and like it's not like somebody's playing a cool song while they're doing this. It is the movie having this weird beats or rhythms, it's and kind dronings,
of meditative droning.
Yeah, so it's like
very unsettling.
Yeah, and a lot of them are really unsettling, and they kind of lull you into this like sense of like this repeating sound, so you start like focusing it out, but you still hear it and everything, and then it culminates in whatever the execution method is. But in the Lawn Work one, I think it's particularly effective. I think it's the last one that he like really watches.
Yeah.
Of the tapes, And that one in particular is this very drone-like sound that they have going. And when you're watching it, it feels as though as the drone goes on, it's actually like getting quieter.
Mm-hmm.
And it is inviting you to actively lean forward into the screen to really see what's going on. It's also like the darkest of them, like actually dark, not, you know, conceptually. They're all messed up and dark like that, but it is happening like at night outside, and the only lights from this camera, and it starts to get really quiet, and then the lawnmower just like goes over somebody, and it, you know, it roars back in, and there's like a scream sound and everything, and then it cuts. You don't actually see anybody get
it's a
killed
massive jump scare,
but it is a huge jump scare. It's probably the biggest one in the entire movie. And it's really good. It is my favorite part of the movie. I look forward to that particular film when he watches it every single time, because I think it is just really creepy really well done.
It's so creepy.
But yeah, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I do. I will say that I do really like that first one that I already described with the family. I think that one is like really well done. It's also one of the first things you see in the movie. They kind of present that without context, and so like that's very jarring as a viewer. But since I already highlighted that, there's one other part that I really, really like, and it is related to another one of the snuff films. One of the films is it's called like Sleepy Time, and it shows this murderer you know, navigating through this family's home when they're all like asleep in bed. So it's kind of this like creepy, like slow walking through the house and around hallways and stuff. And then when it does enter into the parents' bedroom, we see that the parents have been like taped basically to, like, they're bound to the bed, like taped, you know, mouth closed, stuff like that. But they are awake. And he ends up slitting their throats, and that's really horrible. But then he goes and does that to the child in the house as well, like that exact same thing. But the way that they frame it, I thought it was so well done. We actually come out of the film as the viewer, and we're watching, I was about to say Ethan Hawke again, we're watching Ellison Oswalt, and especially with the child murder, you can tell that he's like sick to his stomach watching this, and so he's kind of averting his eyes away, but he's wearing glasses, so we as the audience still see the action through his glasses frames.
Yeah, through the reflection.
Yeah, and I just thought it was so effective and so well done. And I also feel like for me, it really added, obviously it's a, you know, supernatural, it's a fake movie, I get that, but it almost added a sense of realism, because I do think that any normal person would react in that way to seeing some horrible image like that, where it's like, he wants to watch it because he's trying to do this research, but he also like can't bring himself to watch it, and that like lended a sense of realism to it that made it very unsettling to me. I also just thought artistically it was very well done. And also it bummed me out because there was that little chihuahua in the bed with the parents, and the chihuahua was barking.
Oh yeah, it was.
And it looked so, it was like trying to protect its mom and dad.
It probably is fine. Don't think about it.
Yeah. But yeah, that one's really sad and really well done.
Yeah.
And if I can just throw in another thing that I thought was really scary. I think it's scary that Ellison Oswalt only owns one outfit, and it is gray cardigan.
Yeah, that's true.
He wore that gray cardigan in literally every scene.
Yeah, he wears it like all the time. To the point where at the end of the movie, when he's like being drugged by the coffee that, or whatever weird liquid, I guess it's like the blood of Bagul or something. I don't know like what that. The implication. It's this weird green liquid that you see. You see it in one of the other snuff films or whatever. You see it, and so it's like in a pitcher or something like that. And so like clearly this is where they're getting this, you know, drug to do this from or whatever. But it's in his coffee, Ellison's coffee. So he's, you know, been drugged, but like he's like getting really hot while he's like watching the extended cut of these after he's moved back into his house, which again so we didn't mention this, he destroys the footage and everything.
Yeah, he takes it into the fire pit, he burns it, and he
tells
moves his family.
Yeah, he tells
home.
the family to like pack everything up, we're moving back, which is kind of the nail in the coffin and everything.
They literally go like in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so they get back home and he's like putting stuff into the attic in their first house, and the box is up there, and it now has these extended cut versions of the tapes in there. So he, stitches them back together and watches them, and this is when we get the reveal that it's the kids doing it.
Because it's now we're seeing the resolution where, you see the little girl jump down from the tree after having just, hanged her family and stuff. Yeah. So we finally get that payoff.
Right. So, but he's like getting all sweaty and hot and everything because he's watching this, but he's also being drugged, and he's like taking off the cardigan, and it's like, whoa, he actually does take it off.
Yeah, that's not like glued to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing that is absolutely hysterical to me is
I think I know what you're
there's a scene where they're having breakfast in the house.
Yes.
And they're like all eating he's eating a piece of toast for sure.
Yep.
I think there's bread or toast on the kids' plates, but I don't know that they're necessarily having like eaten it or anything, but it is there. But then when they cut, like they do the wider shot of the table, there is, no joke, I counted them, like 6 pieces of toast on a plate there. Yep. So, and she, the Tracy, it has a piece of toast that she's also eating. So like
between that toast, all the toast on their plates.
Yeah.
She has toasted like an entire loaf of bread in addition to eggs.
Yeah, because she's closing up an egg carton. They all have like full plates of food and everything. I'm like, what is happening here? It's so much toast in this scene. And they do the thing that they do in every movie when like characters are eating. Like, they're eating, and then the kids have to go to school, so they just leave the plates.
Right, they took a one bite of the toast.
They didn't even take any of the toast off of the plate to go
Which
or anything.
It is portable.
They just leave it, and so now Ellison's just sitting there with a giant stack of toast.
With a loaf of toasted bread.
And he's not going to eat that. He was waiting for them to leave, so he's going to get drunk on whiskey again.
He's an alcoholic.
And if he eats a bunch of bread, it's not going to absorb.
No. If he has too much in his stomach, he'll throw up when he watches the snuff films.
Exactly. So.
And no, he's not going to report the snuff films because he's got to sell a buck.
Well, yes, that is true, but also because the police said that, basically they didn't want him there, and that they're not at his disposal. He doesn't really have an incentive to turn them over, because if he does, he'll never see them again.
I agree.
But anyway, that scene was
loved that.
So funny. Like, we both saw it and we're like, what are they doing?
There's so much toast.
There's so much toast here.
It was insane. I loved that part.
Yeah.
No, but
it was
really,
you know what? Really weird.
She's a good mom, and you can tell because she made a lot of toast.
She did. She wanted to make sure they got their vitamin-enriched white bread or whatever it was.
And their butter.
Yeah. So much butter. Let's rate this thing.
Let's do it. We're using our scorecard again.
Yeah, we've got our scorecard down. I came out with an average of 6.9 on this one.
And interestingly enough, I also came out with a 6.9, but we did have different scores in like every category, but the math just worked out that way.
Yeah, so our combined average because of that is a 6.9, which I think is fair.
Yeah. I will say that, just kind of like we alluded to in the beginning, I think if I had provided this same rating after the first time I watched this movie, I do think it would be a not insignificant amount higher. But I think when you have already seen it, you know where the scares are, you know what the mystery is, you've got all those pieces already. I don't think it's quite as rewatchable as some other horror movies, because of course there are other horror movies that I'll watch once a year and I never get sick of it, and it never loses any of its power for me. This one, I think, especially because it is so jump scare heavy, it doesn't quite hold up on subsequent watches.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I think there's that. We talked about, the design of the ghoul is kind of hit and miss there. I think some of the makeup choices for the ghost children, whatever. The child acting in general, I think, is not always, but like typically in these movies, like you have to really get the child acting down. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's just, if it's anything less than great, it's just not good.
Yeah, I struggle sometimes with child acting in a horror movie, and I think that some of it, so I'm certain that some of it is the acting skill. I mean, as for a child actor, you are inherently going to be pretty inexperienced, and that's totally valid. But I think a lot of where it comes from is actually the writing.
Oh, sure.
Because something that really bothers me in especially horror movies is when they have these kids in here, but you can tell that an adult wrote
Like
what
the
they
dialogue.
think
Yeah.
is childlike dialogue.
Yeah, it's any movie that involves teenagers,
Right.
that are supposed to be like modern day teenagers or whatever,
Yes.
and they like are saying things that actual teens and real people would never
say. Yeah.
just
I
because
feel like
they're
they
trying
do
to
that
be
to
relatable.
kids a lot,
They
where
do.
it'll be these like it's almost like saccharine in nature, where
Mhm.
it'll be like, well, Daddy, but you're the best writer in the world, and it's like, sorry, but a kid didn't say that.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to make it sound like a kid is saying that, but I know that you're a 40-year-old man,
Yeah.
and you just wrote that.
You can't get one by on me.
Nope. I don't care if you did direct Doctor Strange. Get back in the writing room.
Yeah.
Work it out. Yeah, but anyway, aside from some of those things, I do think it's a very strong horror movie. I mean, even I do think, just to put some respect on its name here, we're saying it's gone down on subsequent watches, and we're still at a 6.9.
Yeah.
So it's still, like, I think it's a good
Like,
movie.
I think it's good. It's just, yeah, the more you watch it, the less good I think it gets. And it's only because, like, I think it only has so much in it
Yeah.
to, like, get out of it. And
I would agree with
because it
that.
is so jump scare dependent,
Mm-hmm.
once you know them, the more you watch it, honestly, the more it leans into that, or starts leaning into that, like, almost like cult classic level,
Yeah.
where they show it at a movie theater and everyone shows up and they know when,
They
like,
know
Rocky
where
Horror
everything
or
is,
something like
yeah.
that, and they're just yelling
I
at the
would
screen.
love a Sinister version where there's, like, talking to the screen and props.
Yeah.
I would attend that.
Yeah, so I think it starts to lean more into that, and I'm sure, like, if I go and watch it again in a year, I'm gonna feel, like, even less enthused about it, just because.
Next year it might be a 5.9, who knows.
Yeah.
But all of that said, if you haven't checked it out, I definitely think it's worth watching. I know we've kind of spoiled it for you at this point, but the jump scares will still work on you. I guarantee
We didn't even get
it.
into all the jump scares.
I guarantee it.
There's other ones in there.
Yeah. But it's a spooky one.
Yeah.
It's spooky. I think that's really all I had to say about it. Do you have any other final thoughts about Sinister? About Ethan Hawke's cardigans?
Cardigan.
Cardigan.
He only has
Or he might have...
Oh, he did like the Albert
He
Einstein
has
thing where he's got like
of
seven
the same cardigan.
the exact same one, so he never has to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else
All right,
about
well,
this one, so.
I guess we'll wrap this up,
Yep.
and we do want to let you know again, due to this episode being a late post, we are giving you guys 2 episodes today. You can keep the good times rolling and go right into the next one, which is going to be a new film. It is available on Shudder, and it's called Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to check it out.
I'm excited about this too. I've heard some mixed things about it.
Yeah,
but...
I've heard skewing positive, but I have heard some negative things about it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to give it a watch and let you guys know what we think about it. So yeah, enjoy this little double feature. Hopefully we won't have to do stuff like this too often.
Yeah.
Pray for our audio quality always.
Yeah. Keep it in your thoughts.
Yep.
Anyway, if you want to reach out to us for recommendations on things we should watch, old, new, whatever, your favorite thing, where can they reach us at?
You can find us on Instagram and X at First Fright Pod. You can also find us on Facebook. Our page is titled the same as our podcast, Love at First Fright. Or you can send us a good old-fashioned email at firstfrightpod@gmail.com.
Yep. Send us your recommendations, love letters, whatever you want to send. Junk mail.
If you're on any lists that you don't want to be on,
sign
just
me up.
hit forward and send it to at First Fright Pod.
I'll sign up for you.
Oh, yeah. Ideally, it'll be about horror movies.
Yeah.
But,
Or maybe it's just like
Get freaky
a
with it.
free coupon for like Jamba Juice or something.
I don't think we have a Jamba Juice, but I'll take it. You know, it's rough out there. Cost of living has gone up, and your girl needs her juice. So...
Anyway, that's gonna do it for us. So, as always, scare well. See you next time. Not again.
Bye!